So now let's jump right into cat UTIs. Can UTIs cause kidney disease?
Definitely. So a urinary tract infection, if it gets out of control for any reason, can go upwards, and it can go up to the kidneys. So obviously the kidneys are connected to the bladder via the tubes called ureters, and infection can track up from the bladder into the kidneys and cause a kidney infection. So it's really important that that we're aware of that, because if your cat has had a UTI at some point and then mysteriously develops kidney issues not long after, then the two things could be linked.
Yeah. So what causes a UTI in cats?
There's many reasons. It's not sort of always straightforward in cats. Often there are underlying reasons why they get it in the first place. So the body has lots of natural defenses to tackle bacterial invasion. One of them being that the concentration of the urine is it's really concentrated, and it's the pH of the urine is slightly acidic, and those two things will be natural kind of barriers to stopping infection. So in diseases where, for example, kidney disease, if a cat already has kidney disease, they'll naturally produce a lot more dilute urine, and so they don't have the same natural defenses against bacteria. So a cat that has pre-existing kidney disease is more likely to get a UTI. Same with things like diabetes and sometimes thyroid disease. So these other underlying diseases make a cat more likely to get an infection. The other major reason that we see UTIs in cats would be often stress related. So stress in cats, and there's all sorts of reasons that they might get stressed. That's a whole other topic, but stress in cats is really common and hard to recognize. And the stress is thought to cause changes in the bladder mucosa that make it more likely to get infected. And more likely to develop crystals in the urine or bladder stones that then make that cat susceptible to getting infections on top of those existing conditions. So infections on their own are not that common. There's usually another underlying reason that cat has got the infection in the first place.
So obviously the best course of action would be talk to your vet if you think your cat may have a UTI, but are there things that you can watch out for at home that like the normal everyday person can say, maybe my cat has a UTI?
Yeah, look, a cat that has a normal immune system that doesn't have any other underlying health issues can potentially get rid of that infection on their own. So if you're seeing symptoms for less than 24 hours, and then they go away, then potentially that cat has had the ability to get rid of that. You see people supplementing cats with things like cranberry juice or cranberry supplements, as with people. And again, getting unusual things into cats can be quite difficult in the first place. And whether or not it helps, the jury is still out to a little bit, because remember always that these kind of treatments are, most of the time, they're aimed at humans, and that doesn't always correlate with what's going to work with animals, particularly cats, because cats are an alien species. They have completely different metabolic pathways, and things that work in humans and dogs don't always work in cats. So there's not always a huge amount you can do at home, other than look at ways to reduce stress. If your cat gets recurrent UTIs, obviously a vet check is needed. But from a home environment point of view, looking at ways to reduce stress. One of the common things we do see that causes stress in cats that people aren't necessarily aware of is if they've got multiple cats in the household. Those cats may be interacting in a way that's causing one of them stress, and you may not notice. You may think it's just them playing, or you may just really not notice those subtle signs. And the other common thing would be if you have like renovation work or someone new coming into the house, that can really stress a cat out, any upset in their routine. And even for an indoor cat, seeing an animal outside of their environment. So an indoor cat is used to, they've got their territory, they're used to that territory. But if they sit at a window or a door and they see a dog outside or another cat outside, that can cause a huge degree of stress, because that cat thinks its territory is being encroached upon.
Funny you mentioned that. Milo, who you met at the start, there he is very much an indoor only cat, just living in a major city. But there's a cockatoo that comes to visit and stands on the porch and just taunts him to death. Poor guy. He's
They
finally
know.
getting used to it. At first, you could see he was really stressed, but now I think he kind of enjoys the interaction with the bird. So, how would you go about treating a UTI?
The number one thing really is to have that cat checked at a vet. So a UTI, if it's the first time we see a cat for a UTI, we would certainly have a look at the urine, see if there's evidence of infection, and then treat appropriately with antibiotics if they're needed. If it's a second or a third time a cat has a urinary infection, we would always advise culturing the urine, which means taking a sample and sending it off to a lab to try and grow the bacteria and make sure we haven't got a resistant bacteria, because sometimes bacteria can become resistant to certain antibiotics, and then we're just treating without really knowing whether it's working or not. The final thing is, from a point of view of investigations, making sure, as we said, that there's no other underlying cause. So we might be doing ultrasound scans to make sure there's no bladder stone, that there's no other underlying issue. And from a natural point of view, looking at diet, making sure that animal's got a balanced diet, and sometimes increasing supplementation of essential fatty acids in their diet can help reducing inflammation as well.
So you briefly touched on UTIs will go away by themselves. Would you just kind of elaborate a bit more on like why that happens, or like if that's more often than not what happens?
Look, it's something that I think, sometimes we don't always recognize the signs, especially if it comes and goes quite quickly in cats. But the majority of UTIs will cause a degree of discomfort and pain for the cat. So you might see them, if they're an indoor cat, going in and out the litter tray quite frequently, or producing a little bit less urine each time they're going. Be aware that in male cats, if they're in and out of the litter tray frequently, there's a high risk that they could be developing a true bladder obstruction, which is potentially life-threatening. So male cats, it's really important that you have them checked and make sure they're not obstructed, that they are actually able to pass urine. Female cats, because of their anatomy, they tend not to get obstructed very frequently, but it can be a painful condition. So the way that they get rid of it is through those natural defenses. So if bacteria try and take hold, the urine, because it's so concentrated, will kill the bacteria that's there. So they may have symptoms for a short period, but then if they go away naturally, you don't need to follow up any treatment.
Great. So in terms of prevention, what can we do to help prevent UTI in cats?
The mainstay is making sure that there's no stress in the environment. That's so important, and I think it's so overlooked by a lot of people, mainly because they're not aware that this is a potential issue. But stress in cats is a huge problem when you have these recurrent urinary issues, and even things like if you've got multiple cats in the household, making sure each cat has access to a fresh litter tray, and because some cats don't want to use the same litter tray as another cat.
Mm.
They can be very fussy, and they don't want to use a litter tray that's already been used once. They might, even if it's all dry, that cat doesn't want to go and use that litter tray because it already smells of another cat's urine. So having clean litter trays, plenty of fresh water access, and reducing stress in cats is really important.
Great. So we all love our little fur babies. How can we make our cat more comfortable that's experiencing a UTI?
So definitely keeping litter trays clean, super important. So, if they're in and out lots, you need to make sure that they've got a clean environment, make sure it's somewhere safe. So again, if you've got toddlers running around, or you've got dogs or anything that might disturb that cat, often having a litter tray somewhere up high where only that cat can get to it is really helpful. Making sure they've got a comfy bed somewhere that they can get away from it all. And cats, like to be up high. You know, if they're stressed in any way or they don't feel well, they like to be enclosed and they like to be up high. So a cardboard box somewhere on a countertop is a cat's idea of heaven. You know, they can just curl up in there and not be bothered by the world. So those are the kind of things you can do to help, you know, reduce your cat's stress. And then you can look at things like hemp seed oil or CBD oil to help reduce anxieties, help reduce inflammation in the bladder as well. And those are the sort of natural things you can do to support your cat.
So what are some natural remedies for a UTI for your cat?
So natural things that you can do if it's a mild, mild symptoms and your cat's otherwise well. So as long as they're still eating and drinking, then potentially you can try some things at home first. So we're looking at really anti-inflammatory products. So things like essential fatty acids in their diet can help reduce inflammation. And some of the oils, so hemp seed oil is one of them that has this really good balance of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids that are good for inflammation. It also has antioxidant properties as well. So these kind of things can help with any kind of inflammatory condition, and that includes urinary issues. Other natural things, a really common one would be turmeric. The active ingredient in that is curcumin, and that has been proven to be a really good anti-inflammatory agent. So the only problem with some of these things is getting them into your cat. So those kind of things, particularly turmeric, it's quite strong smelling. So a lot of cats just don't tolerate it. So really what we turn to is your combination oils. So hemp seed oil and fish oils is a really good combination of essential fatty acids that you can usually get into your cat. The fish oils are usually fishy enough flavoring that most cats will tolerate it. Maybe not all, but if you can get that into your cat, it can really help. So Buddy Pet has a product called Luna, which is that combination of fish oils and hemp seed oil, and it's something that you can put on the food, or you can use the dropper and put directly in your cat's mouth. And it's a daily supplementation that will help boost those anti-inflammatory inducing essential fatty acids.
Great. So when are antibiotics necessary to treat a UTI?
Look, so antibiotics, it depends on the type of bacteria involved. Often there's some bacteria that are more that are nastier than others, basically. Some that have more potential to take hold, go up to the kidneys and cause kidney problems as well. So a lot of it revolves around whether this is the first time your cat's ever had a UTI, whether it definitely is a UTI. So people often say a cat has a UTI when actually they've just got cystitis. So cystitis is the symptoms. That just means an inflamed bladder, and the inflamed bladder can happen for a number of reasons. So people often assume that it's a UTI when it's not. UTIs aren't actually as common as people realize in pets. More often, signs of cystitis can be related to stress, can be related to crystals in the urine, which are, again, often come back to stress as well. So you need to know that you definitely have a UTI first before instigating antibiotics. So if you took your cat to the vet, we would always be looking at a urine sample to see, have we got evidence of an actual UTI in here, or do we have what we would call a sterile sterile cystitis, which is where there is no bacterial involvement. So antibiotics, not always necessary. But if you do have a true bacterial infection and it's a particularly nasty type of bacteria, you're not going to get anywhere without them, unfortunately.
Great. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.